Welcome to Paper Trails, a podcast by Albemarle Paper about restaurants, industry news, and entrepreneurship. Hosted by Nick Kalogeromitros. Each episode features insights from industry leaders, business owners, and experts sharing what it takes to grow and succeed.
What's going on, guys? How are you? And welcome back to the Paper Trails podcast. I am your host, Nick Kalogeromitros, and we are launching season 4 of our podcast. Super excited to have Dave Hamme at Lost Worlds Brewing. We're up here in Cornelius at their original location, almost 5 years ago. And so anyway, we met a few weeks ago and had a great business conversation. And honestly, I paused the conversation because it was so good. And I said, "Hey, Dave, if you're cool with it, let's get on a podcast." That's exactly
for the camera.
That's exactly what I said. And so, honestly, Dave, I really loved your mindset on the industry. We had a good conversation about consumerism, people going out and spending money, and
absolutely.
I think this is something that people like to hear and enjoy and to learn about. And so, I'm excited to just chat with you a little bit about your world, what you're seeing in the business world. Obviously, we're in the new year, 2025.
Absolutely.
You know, a little bit of a rocky year, maybe the last year from what I'm seeing in the restaurant, hospitality industry. Even just as of locally, I've seen a number of restaurants close, you know, and so, and I think we had a conversation, some breweries have closed over the last, 6, 12, 18 months. And so I'd love to dive a little bit more into that. And so anyway, if you guys have not subscribed or engaged with any of our content, go ahead and do it. We're on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. And so anyway, let's kind of launch the pod. Tell us a little bit about, Dave, your background a little bit, in the beginning, where you're from, and we'll kind of, slowly enter the story.
Absolutely. And that's, when you say where I'm from, I think of S4E1. I've lived in 26 cities, so there's been a lot of movement in my life. But when I graduated from college, I had an engineering and industrial management degree.
Okay.
And didn't like what I was doing, went back, got an MBA, but I became a business consultant.
Okay.
So for the last 35, 40 years, I've worked inside about 100 companies, and that's from big ones to large ones. The biggest, everything from the federal government to small little startups. And my niche has always been, how do companies change? How do they innovate? And not only, what's that spark for the moment to take them from A to B, but how do they build it into their culture that they're continuously reevaluating, almost like a living organism, deciding what they need to do and making the change. So my background is really kind of making sure companies how to evolve, change, and get better. And I actually wrote a book about it. It's called Customer Focused Process Innovation.
Okay.
I won a Shingo Award for that. That really is kind of how do you embed innovation into the DNA of your organization.
Okay.
So that's what I brought as a background to come into craft breweries.
Where'd you go to college at? Around here?
So I went to Purdue for undergrad and Indiana University for grad school.
And is that where you were living at the time? I mean, how did you end up going to those colleges? How did that happen?
It's just luck of the draw, to be honest. Okay. I was living in Pennsylvania before I went to Purdue, and I was living in Ohio before I went to IU, and they just ended up, I don't know why I went to 2 schools in Indiana, it just ended up being the way it played out.
Okay, nice.
So
all right.
Great experiences, so.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the consulting. I'm curious, what are some things that you've seen out of the 100 companies that you helped in those days before you got into the brewery world, about common mistakes that you've seen business owners, management, executives make? Anything that stands out to you? Because I think 100 is a good sample size that you kind of see some
commonalities,
some trends. Yeah. What are you seeing?
I'll tell you, there's 2 that really stand out, and after being in a company for 2 weeks, there's some things I could learn about how well they were functioning and what their future looked like. The first one is companies that care about the details tend to take care of the big stuff.
That's good.
It's like if you're here at Lost Worlds, one of the things we really focus on is how our tables are set up, chairs are pushed in, every table's clean, we don't leave a dirty table going, how our table tents are oriented. If we look at those things like the floor is clean, our bathrooms are clean, the bigger things tend to take care of themselves over time. So that's the first one. The second thing is any company, I feel, has to have 2 roles that have to be filled. One of them is, and it's funny because I get this in interviews all the time, like, what do you respect in a manager? Like, I want them to get down and get dirty with me. And I'm like, that's the exact opposite of success. If you're down there and in the dirt with your employees, you're not doing your role. You're doing their role, and they're no longer necessary. But what you should have, and every company has 2 roles. One person is organizing the operations. They're looking at the operations from a day-to-day perspective, and they're making sure those things are taken care of. If there's consistent problems, they create new procedures to accommodate that. They're worrying about staffing. They're taking care and feeding of the employees. You have to have a role that's separate of that, and that role is someone who's looking 2, 3, 4 years out in the future.
Okay.
They're planning. They're building programs. They're managing the evolution of your company. They're building things for the future. And so I view my role here at Lost Worlds as we have some people who handle the day-to-day stuff. If I'm the day-to-day stuff, I'm doing the wrong thing. My goal is to build partnerships, programs to get butts in the seats, and to make us continue to be interesting. And if we can do those things, we will be successful.
And you've seen that across the board when you got people that have you heard of EOS?
EOS.
Or EA, it's like entrepreneur something like
EOS, yes.
Is it EOS?
Yes.
It's like kind of like, I mean, I don't know much about it, but I know a little bit about it. One's a visionary, and then one's kind of the operator that kind of helps the vision, kind of the same concepts?
Absolutely. You have to have that. And because they're two different roles. There's a great book called Switch, and I read a number of years ago. I think Chip Heath was the author.
Okay.
And he talked about our minds. And if you're if you're that strategic visionary, or if you're writing a book even, and you get interrupted, you can't think, or you don't have the time to think of that stuff, your productivity goes to the floor. I mean, if you're writing a book or something like that, and someone interrupts you, 30 minutes to get you back on in style so you can get back to the same pace you're at. Same thing. If you're thinking strategically and thinking about the future, and you get interrupted to say, hey, we're out of limes at the brewery, it takes you off. You can't do that. So that's why you need two roles. One person has to have that time to just get the mind space.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they live in isolation. I don't mean that at all.
Yeah.
If you are a writer, you got to be reading all the time. That's how your ideas come out.
Yeah.
If you are a strategist in a company, you got to be visiting the competition. You got to be sitting in here and watching stuff. But you can't do both of those roles. It's impossible. Our minds are not set up to be that way.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, dang, I was gonna say something. Okay. No. It was good. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I could definitely. What I was gonna say was it's the difference between working in your business and on your business.
You got it.
Right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I mean, I think sometimes
There's a book like that. So that are you working on your business or in your business?
Really?
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I think I mean, you know what? I think I like that. The details. Handle the details, and the big stuff kind of handles itself. And then I love, the
duality of the roles.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. So, okay, good. Anything else that kind of stands out to you about, or maybe things that you've seen companies that have scaled have done, is it systems in place, SOPs? Is it hiring the right people? Is it hiring out I don't know. Is there anything else about team building or that you've seen bigger companies that start to, that go from 2, 10, 50, 100 million that do right?
The scalability is a big one. And I think, again, that goes back to that visionary. Whoever that visionary is, and it's not a hands-off. It's not a pie-in-the-sky thing. They actually have to build, and I'm playing it here. I have a staffing plan for 3 years in the future for Lost Worlds, just because I'm thinking about where we're going to be, what are the different roles we're going to need. And so you're building out that future. And that, to me, is the epitome of what a leader becomes, is not only identifying what systems you need, but what people you need, but also having the flexibility as you're building that to realize that what you're seeing today may not be the environment you're operating in the future.
It's true.
And you have to adjust and accommodate that. So there's a lot of technology. I'm already thinking about how AI is going to impact our business.
Yep.
What are we going to be doing differently? How are people going to be moving about in our society 5 years from now? Is it all automated cars and that type of thing? Are they going to be, is their cars going to be ordering their coffee for them? How do we adjust and accommodate that?
It's very interesting. I think that's why a lot of times, even if you're the operations person, when you take a little bit of a break and you go on vacation for a weekend or you just step aside, you come back so much more refreshed with a better lens because of that.
Absolutely.
You took a little bit of a break. You kind of cleanse the palate, so to speak, and then you're kind of back at it looking at your business from another perspective, right?
Absolutely, and you have to do that. I mean, that's one thing of leaders is you have to get away on occasion, not just strategic leader, but operational leader or any leader. You got to get away because you see how people do things differently.
Yeah.
And you bring that back and you put into your business what makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's hard, though, because a lot of owners are in the weeds and they're doers and they're operators. I'm just thinking of my family. My dad, he's 71. He's owned the restaurants for 40 years. he has an apron on and he's in the back doing it. I'm not saying it's the right thing, because a lot of times he's doing such menial tasks that I'm like, Dad, like, you don't go to the front, touch tables.
But that might be where his passion is,
No,
right?
he loves it. He loves it. Like,
his passion.
he loves it. You know,
So he's also probably, and I don't know your father,
Yes.
compromised the growth because of that.
100%.
There you go.
100%. I agree with that. So, but I can always see when he goes on vacation and visits Greece back home and sees his family, comes back, just the eagerness, the fervor, the excitement. He's just, he's gone to different restaurants. Well, I can see when it happens. It's just really hard to get an owner because they're vested. It's their baby, right?
Absolutely.
But I do think it's important though. You make a very good point. Okay, so consulting, 100 companies, did that for many years. What happened there? Did you see a change in that industry? Why leave the consulting industry?
For me, I guess you get a little burned out on corporations. And when I was doing, to continue to progress my career, I was working for bigger companies a lot of the times. I got to be honest, there is in the American society today, and particularly in American business, there's a hesitancy to take risks. There was a survey that came out recently, and they asked CEOs, what would you prefer to do? To take a big revolutionary risk and try and drive your company forward, or for your company to die slowly? And overwhelmingly, 95% of them said, I want to die slowly. We're protecting their own interests, right?
Okay.
I'm going to be there while it's slowing down. I'll be taken care of. The future of the company really isn't something that matters to them. That, to me, is kind of what has happened in the consulting industry, is those leaders who are willing to take those audacious leaps and to do those things are not there anymore.
Why?
We have a risk-averse culture.
Why? Why has that happened?
Because you think about yourself, right? If you take a big audacious risk and you fail, what happens? You get fired, you lose your livelihood, right? No one wants to do that in this day and age. It's harder and harder to find jobs these days. I mean, selling consulting jobs, I used to be able to meet with you on a lunch and say, hey, I can do this for your business. And we would go back to your office and we would sign a contract and I would do it. Those days are gone. Now, if you and I are having that conversation, you say, Dave, I really like this. I can get approval from this person, this person, this person, and this person. As a result of that, we die. Because what they're going to do out there, the idea that I might have pitched you is my specific idea, you're now going to take that to a bigger consulting firm and say, hey, guys, do you have someone that can do this? And I'm going to lose that work. So it became harder and harder for me to get the work that I was successful at, that I was trained for.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I really didn't have passion for working for those big consulting firms. The same thing. They don't take those risks as well. They're going to listen to what you say, play it back to you, make you feel good, and then implement what you already told. It's just a different. I was more the consultant who was going to say, okay, I hear what you're saying. I want to challenge you a little bit. Let's do these exercises to figure out what it really is, and then let's build that solution.
Do you think that, to validate what you're saying, do you think that because of the world of social media and attention, that the thought of being humiliated publicly because of just making a stand or a decision also plays a factor? Because people don't want to be humiliated now in front of everybody. So-and-so CEO, I'm just thinking like right now, over this past, I don't know if you're a sports guy, but Luka Doncic just got traded to the Lakers.
Absolutely.
And this general manager is getting so much heat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Listen, I don't think it was a good move either. Okay, whatever.
25-year-old franchise player. Why don't you trade him?
Yeah.
One of the most popular players in the world. Yeah.
But you know what? At least this guy's making a stand. At least he's doubling down. He's like, no, this is what I think. I'm like, okay. I'm like, we'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I do have to agree with you that it's harder and harder for people to just double down and believe in themselves and their decisions. Because this guy's going to be either general manager of the century or going to be a fool, and we can...
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's just true. I mean, there's a reason why people buy for brand. It's something that's safe, it's secure. They're less inclined to maybe a better product out there, but they don't go to that. I mean, that's just the same way that we work in these companies. We, as most employees, go for the safe. They want the consistent, the easy.
Yeah.
I mean, risk is hard. Change is hard. It's
It is
scary.
hard. It is hard.
And particularly in this environment, like when it's, we're a very risk-averse country like that.
Okay, so you saw consulting heading in that direction, and you wanted out?
I wanted out. To be honest with you, I'm getting up there and a little long in the tooth and wanted to have something where I wasn't traveling as much and those types of things. So I still consult a little bit on the side here and there, but it's not my primary focus. My primary focus for the last couple of years has been Lost Worlds Brewing and making this what it can be.
Okay, so why beer? Why brewery? Why how did that even come about?
I was a home boomer for years. I mean, we're talking 20, 25 years, brewing a little bit on home. But what kind of got me about this industry is it was so young when I first got into it. Okay. Now, it has blown up over the last couple of years, like a few industries. Yeah. But it was still in the phase where I'll say it was build it and you come. You could put a brewery anywhere and people would come. They would seek it out and do it because it was a destination. So that was appealing to me because I thought, taking innovations, ideas, and concepts and applying it to the craft beer industry, that could be interesting. That could be a lot of fun and really seeing what we can build with that. Okay. So that idea excited me because I knew enough about it. I spent all my Saturdays and Sundays in breweries. I love the environment in breweries. What can we do to change that and make it a new experience? And I'll use it. I tell my team here, we're going to become the Savannah Bananas of craft brewery.
Okay.
Jess Cole has completely innovated what minor league baseball or what professional baseball looks like. Sure. We want to do that for craft breweries.
Okay. So let's talk about starting a brewery, starting a business, period. There's, a lot of our followers that engage with us are all interested in business, either business themselves, small business owners, or just want to be peak performers in their industry, okay? Let's talk about starting a business. Was this your first business you started?
No, it's the fourth business I've started.
Fourth, okay. What have you learned about starting a business that can help somebody that maybe has aspirations to do it, ambitions to do it? There's a lot of behind the scenes things that people would have no clue about or have not even thought about anything, whether it's a catering company, a roofing company, landscaping, doesn't matter. Obviously, there's levels to it.
Absolutely.
So what are some things that you learned about starting a company, period, and then we'll dive into Lost Worlds specific.
It's your question is very timely because when I published my first book with McGraw-Hill, the thought was I would come back with a second book in the future, and I'm actually working on it right now. It's called The Happy Entrepreneur.
Okay.
And the intent is to, if you have never been an entrepreneur before, what are those things you need to think of? And there's 1,001 things I can share with you on that, but I think the key thing is you really have to focus on the numbers at the end of the day. The numbers and the customer. You have to identify who your customer is. You have to really zero in on them. What do they like? And I use a couple tools to do that. But, what do they like or what do they want out of your product? What would dissatisfy them? What are the things that are performance factors? And that's a little bit of Kano analysis in terms of how you identify what your product or service is and how it appeals to a customer and where are they and how you're going to reach out to them.
Okay.
And then the thing is, after you have all that, can you do that profitably? Can you make money doing that?
Yep.
And before you go any further, you have to spend a lot of time with the back of an envelope calculations, running out those numbers, as well as visiting places and seeing if it will work. But beyond that, then there's a whole nother thing. There's other things like if you were going out and are you going to rent or buy your location? And if you're going to rent it, how expensive is that really? And what's, what are the interest rates and all that? And it's all those factors. Like one of the things, for example, leases are written to be indecipherable to the average human, right? You get a lease and you read through that and it is just confusing as all be all. The problem is we hand to a lawyer and think they have our best interest in. They don't have your best interest. They have their interest in getting you to pay them, of course, for spending time on this. Yep. So I think what you have to do is you take your lease and I say write it in your own words. Go through the lease page by page. This is why I think this means. This is why I think this means. This, and then give that page to your attorney. Say, did I interpret this correctly? And make sure you are okay with what was on that page. If you're not okay with it, then you need to renegotiate that lease. So it's things like that, just kind of breaking it down into steps that make it doable for the average person, as opposed to you don't need a law degree, you don't need an accounting degree, you don't need an operations degree to do these things. Make it so you understand it. You have to understand your business from the customer to the finances to how all that thing's going to play out.
Yeah, I just last month I interviewed Frank Schiavelli, who owns Mama Ricotta's and Millwood, and he has a lot of restaurants. And one of the things that he made a good point was, there's a lot of ideas when it comes to restaurants, but for them, their ideas, it's not even because, with him, I'm sure he's got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of employees. It's not just the idea. The really question is, can we execute this?
Absolutely.
Like, can we actually do this? Like, everybody has an idea about anything, a new sushi restaurant, this, that, whatever. It's like, no. Can we even make this work? I think is like one of his biggest questions. And you said that too, you know what I mean? Like you said, obviously the numbers have to work. Obviously, the customers have got to be in mind, but can we even do this? Is this a possible thing? One thing that I've learned, and give me your thoughts on this, Dave, is just owning my paper company for 16 years is I guess I've realized through the years how important sales is. If you have sales, you can afford to make some mistakes. If you don't have the sales, you really can't afford it because it will put you out of business.
Absolutely.
Because you got to hit payroll, you got to hit rent, you got to hit insurances. There's so many other factors that if you're not really, really, really pushing sales and bringing in new clients and creating revenue, the threshold that you have of error or risk is really small.
I agree.
Right?
Sales is the most important thing. I'll take the next step, profitable sales. You can't give away your house to make a sale. So there's so many companies will say, I hate this thing, but I hear this all the time. Come out, advertise with us, it's just a marketing cost. Or why don't you give us free beer? It's just a marketing cost. Okay, no, it's not a marketing cost. It's an expense. And that's an expense that takes away from the profitability of whatever I'm selling at that particular point.
Yep.
It has to be profitable. So you got to make good sales. There was one time I was working for a home improvement retailer, and we were selling installation services. We cut out services and became more profitable because we were making sales that were not profitable for us. Cut out this reign of services and we're a much more profitable company. And sometimes that really kind of jives against what we think. Less sales can be more profitable. But in general, you're right. You got to go out and get your sales net, but they have to be the right sales as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. A couple of years ago, I think another thing, that we realized running our company is just stay in our niche. Like one thing we tried doing is seasonings a couple of years ago, and it didn't take off. Everybody was so picky about, every chef, every cook wanted Spanish paprika, red paprika, bulk paprika, white pepper, ground pepper. It was too much. And honestly, it was too much. And I'm like, honestly, my cousin was the one who was like, hey, like, we can't do this anymore. And I felt like it was kind of like I failed because, like, I couldn't get this line up.
You made a good business decision.
We did. Like, looking back now, it hurt a little bit of my ego because I handle sales and he does more operations. But it was the best move. Like, I was like,
failure is good too.
It is. No, you're right.
We have a motto here: fail better, and that is kind of like if you're going to fail, that's fine. But learn why we failed, understand why we failed, and then use that as the platform to move forward.
Yep. I agree with that. So, okay, all right. So, you grew up kind of the brewery. Like you loved it. Okay, starting 4 businesses. Okay, so let's talk about starting this business. Where does somebody start to start a brewery? How does it work? How does it begin? Obviously, you have a couple locations now. Let's start the beginning. Where, how does these conversations start?
So it starts about how are we going to be unique? I am not a fan of copycats, and I've been in a lot of big companies, and they don't move unless their competitor moves. As soon as their competitor moves, they want to fall right in line with whatever they're doing.
Okay.
I've watched that my whole life. I'm not a fan of that model. To me, you have to think strategically. And strategic means making decisions about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do.
Okay.
For us, strategically, we really had 3 principles here. First is craft breweries in general are not good at branding. They don't have a brand. You'll see the name when you walk out the door, Doofenshmirtz's Brewery. You'll walk inside. There'll be nothing to tie that together. There's no brand that they promote through their cans. There's nothing consistent that they drive through it. We want to have a brand. So our brand is adventure, archaeology, history, travel, kind of blended together. And so we did that by patterning, like our event room here is patterned after an explorer's club of yesteryear. People would travel around the world, they'd collect items, they'd bring them back, they'd put them on the walls, they'd have all their friends over and they'd tell them what they are. So we call them taproom artifacts all over this place.
Okay.
And a lot of them have stories.
Okay.
All of our beers are named after a historical person, item, location, or moment in time. And we tell you the story on the back of the can. For a lot of our stuff, and these don't have as many of them, but the QR codes will tell you the story of each of these things here. So, we go everything from Egyptians' version of the Grimberry Trails to Aztecs. This is a medicinal calendar. So we have these things all over the place. We have over on this side the Mayflower passengers. We named our beer, our pumpkin is called Squantos, after Squanto, who was a former slave in Europe, Native American, and it actually helped the Pilgrims survive their first winter.
Okay.
So all of our beers have that lineage. So that was one, the brand. And our tagline is find your adventure. Be what it be, but find your...
Are you a history buff?
I'm a huge history buff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a nerd. It's true. The second thing is we wanted to have good beer. Because when we went around to a lot of breweries, what you would find is they would have a dozen IPAs and then 2 or 3 other beers. And they were hit or miss. We call it our Baskin-Robbins strategy. we want every one of our beers, if you have it, to say they've done that beer well. So we're not going to have, and we're going to have a diverse selection. What we recognize is we're going to have 5 beers year-round. We call them our base camp beers. And we'll have seasonal and other adventurous specialty releases. But our goal is to make every one of those beers as good. So when you come here, if you have a Schwartz beer, you may not be even familiar with the style, you're going to say, that's one of the better Schwartz beers I've had. And we don't comply with the standards. We build our beers to our customers. They are the true arbiters of our success or failure, so we're focusing on them. So 2 is have a great beer.
Okay.
So best equipment, best brewers you can find. We don't skimp on that. Best materials, no skimping on quality for us there. Then the 3rd one, we want to build a community of what we call raving fans. We want people who this is the place they choose after their home and their work to spend the rest of their time. And so when they're here, we need to create things to engage them. How do our beers reflect that? How does the atmosphere reflect it? How does our guest services model reflect that? All those things go into that to creating our community of raving fans, because we want people who are here to come back again and again, to bring their friends, to participate in our events, and to be our biggest spokespeople.
I love that. I think it's so telling that you definitely know what you're trying to accomplish, right? With your product. Well, you have to, but you can attest to this. How many companies or owners or CEOs don't know, right? What the goal is.
A large majority.
That's what I'm saying. You could tell you have put thought into every part of that, which, I think I love that. It's fantastic. Yeah. So, okay.
I don't know how you do it and you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
If you're here, you got to have a passion for what you're doing. You got to be engaged on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And you have to focus on those things. If you don't have that as the entrepreneur, you are the energy, you are the lifeblood, you are the heartbeat of your company. If you don't have that, who does have that? And how does that permeate out to your employees?
I agree 100%. Enthusiasm is contagious. It's important. I think it's one of the chapters in How to Win Friends and Influence People about enthusiasm and excitement. Like, if you don't have that, that's where it starts.
Who has it?
Yeah, you expect the employee, you expect Joe Schmo coming in working a 6-8 hour shift to be. No, it starts with you. It starts at the top. Absolutely. So I love that. Okay, so you know your product, what you're trying to accomplish, the customer, what they want, all that. You launch, Lost Worlds Brewing 5 years ago in March. Okay. How'd you think of the name? Obviously, it sounds like, history buff, kind of all that. I'm sure that ties into it. And then what are some things that you learned the first year of having the brewery?
Gotcha. So Lost Worlds comes from, again, archaeology and history in that. About the time that we were doing this, it was funny. I was looking at a bunch of different names because I was going through what they would be and how they could play out. And a friend of mine who's an archaeologist, we're talking through things. And at the time, LIDAR and all types of, ground penetrating radar was becoming of that. And they were beginning to find new cities that they had thought, there was records of them back in biblical times or on the Silk Road and that, but they had never seen them before, particularly Mayan and stuff in Mexico. And we just sitting, it's like, how about Lost Worlds? I'm like, well, I bet Crichton has that because Michael Crichton had the book Lost Worlds. It was kind of part 2 of Jurassic Park.
Okay.
And I went and I looked into stuff and I was like, well, all those have expired. I'm like, let's do Lost Worlds. But for us, it means lost societies, lost communities, lost societies, kind of a Jules Verne meets Jacques Cousteau vibe. And it kind of fit with us. And when you have these names at first, they feel very awkward rolling off your tongue. This one very quickly became to us like, we are Lost Worlds. That's what we're about. We're about discovery and finding new stuff. And, it's historical things that we've forgotten or recipes that have been forgotten. Lost Worlds just was kind of like the encompassing of all of that. So it came in there. So we opened up our doors and immediately this thing called COVID hit us. And we shut down almost immediately. So
hey, that's right. March 2020.
You got it. Every single tank was full of beer because one of the things I had read time and time, if you're starting a brewery, do not run out of your beers out of the get-go because you're going to get a flood of people. Make sure you can come in. Every tank was spilled. Every dollar I could possibly spent was there. And then, boom, it hit and we were shut down. So it was we got around it, but how we got around it was, there was aluminum shortage back then too, which is a funny thing. You couldn't get aluminum. I got a mobile canner in here. I looked at a little thing that they said, and as if you're delivering to a grocery store, you can stay open. So I said, So I called my buddy in the grocery industries and got a contract, and we canned that Monday and started having cans shortly thereafter. But that was how we stayed afloat during that time period, is we opened at the absolute worst time, and we had to find a strategy to start getting revenue. Because to your point, sales is key. You got to have sales. So we just switched, and we weren't going to can for a year or two. We canned right out of the gate.
Wow. And I think that is, gosh, what a story. That is the power of innovation and business. I mean, what you guys did is what every entrepreneur needs to do to make sure they're continuing to grow and be around, right?
Well,
I mean,
necessity is the mother of innovation, right?
Yes. Well, you have to. I mean, What is it? IBM started out, IBM is International Business Machines. They started out with, meat slicers, then they got into time clocks, then they got into computers, and now IBM, I think, does more consulting more than anything.
Absolutely.
And it's like, all right, well, if they need to innovate, then us, the small guy, because sometimes we don't have control of, external factors, right? So you really have to do your best to pivot and innovate and change, which is hard.
Oh,
it is hard for everybody, but you have to.
Scary.
It is scary, but you have to do it. Okay. Let's talk about first 5 years in business, anything you've learned. I mean, obviously you opened a second location, I think last year, a second and a third location last year. So you're down in Charlotte.
We're in Charlotte, the metropolitan down there.
Metropolitan area. And then you also have a location where they're selling your beer.
At the Winston-Salem Dash.
At the Dash, Winston-Salem Dash baseball.
The minor league baseball.
Minor league baseball, okay? Right. So what have you learned in the last 5 years? Why open up other locations? How did the Dash thing come about? Give us a little context on that.
I think the biggest thing I've had the last 5 years is you got to try new stuff. And not everything that we're going to try is going to be successful.
Yep.
But we have to continuously try to become interesting. And that takes a number of things. Like one of the things we pouted the first year is we have a large back lot back here where we brought in 50 artisans and vendors, and we created a market back there. So I got an expansion of premises. You could drink alcohol any place you went back there. And that, crazy idea, who would do something like that? It hit. So we're going to end up doing 6 markets at this location this year, everything from a Mardi Gras market to a Halloween market to a summer market to our biggest one's our holiday market where they started after Thanksgiving. But that was something we tried. And it's just those things, but we keep trying new things to do. And some of them work, some of them don't.
Yeah.
We had one, for example, we decided to take our artifacts and we put a flight of 4 beers together. You would go around and you have a treasure map to find the different artifact, read about it through a QR code. And if you'd come back with your flight card afterwards, one of our adventure guides would answer your questions. And if you got the questions right, you'd get a prize. So we're doing stuff like that. It just didn't take off,
Yep.
People, when they come for their beer, are coming to relax and have a conversation. They don't want to wander around the tap room. Some do, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But not enough to make that a sustainable thing that we want to do.
Gotcha.
So it's learning about things. It's learning what our guests are on that type of thing. But we've done fairly well at this location. And again, we got a whole set of new events I'm really excited about this year. We're constantly changing stuff, building new partnerships. But we got to that point where we wanted a new challenge. And that challenge was to grow, we need to have a second location. We have all of our brewing equipment here, but if we have separate tap rooms, we don't replicate that cost. So we have the ability to make money in additional tap rooms. Because that's where you make all your money in breweries. I mean, depending upon who you're talking to, if I sell a beer externally, 20% profit. If I sell it in here, 80%. So I'm managing those margins. I want to sell more beer here. So the tap room became something we wanted to do. And that location appealed to us because, again, we wanted to be interesting. It's off the Greenway, the Sugar Creek Greenway, and it's an established area where you have like a Target, the Trader Joe's, a lot of growth down there.
Yeah.
But the Greenway is what appealed to us. I like the idea of getting people so we aren't the only destination. You come to the Greenway, you're enjoying that, and then you see our location. In the same way, the Winston-Salem Dash, they approached us, liked our brand, and said, they already had 2 other larger beer breweries in there. They really wanted someone who was kind of a contrast to that. And they liked our brand, how we promoted it. So we became their choice. I mean, they had an RFP. I think we came in very late in the process, but they chose us. And so we've been working with them since. Again, another different location, different type of experience for people, but we were playing into that experience. A great beer, good experience with good people. They become raving fans.
I love that. I mean, I love like what you said about, and not everything's going to hit, and you're okay with that.
Got to be.
You're okay with that. I mean, it's just.
I'm not the downward spiral CEO if you don't.
You're not, you're not. And you know what? I respect it. And I think it's something that we all need to challenge ourselves to be, I think the thought of you starting at one point and success is on one side and failures on the other is wrong. You got to go through failure to success. But in our whole life, when we're always, the teacher's in red marking mistakes, and it's like, as long as you learn from it, we should be okay with that. It's okay. Like, we shouldn't think that, because you got a B plus and did you learn the material? Yes. Okay, good. If you didn't, that's where the problem lies, right?
Absolutely.
Which may be a whole other subject as far as education and all that. But anyway, I think that's what I like the most about what you said, is just being okay with it. Okay, all right, this didn't work. Yeah. Let's see, let's keep moving. As long as it didn't take us out of business, let's keep moving.
And it's not, the thing about failure is we don't approach it in a lackadaisical manner, like saying, some failure is okay. I don't subscribe to that at all. It's like, let's do this. Let's learn everything we can, think about it, and really be primed for success, but recognize, we might have to recalibrate. We might have to make adjustments, and that's okay. And then there's things we're going to say, hey, we recalibrated, it's still a fuzzy picture. Let's not do that. Let's spend our efforts here. So we're constantly looking through what I'll call an innovation portfolio.
Yep.
It's a collection of ideas we have. Let's try this one. Let's try this one. Let's try this one.
Yeah.
Let's put this one on hold, or we don't maybe know enough to do this one, but we'll study it a little bit.
Yeah.
So we plant seeds. We call it seed planting. Those ideas are back here. We might do it. We're not there today.
Yep.
But then we have others that are more upfront that, this is, and I got to be honest, our priorities change.
Yep.
We may have a top 5 ideas I think we're doing this year. We may do all 5 of them. We may do one of them. It just depends how the environment comes. We have new administration in office, new economic conditions, potential tariffs coming down. All these things may impact what we do.
Yep.
But those are just the external factors. We're going to do something. We just don't know what that is.
Yeah. You're planting seeds is what I call let it marinate. Like, we'll have a conversation. You know what? Hey, let's think about that. Let it marinate for the next couple of days. Let your subconscious mind and conscious mind think about it.
You got
come
to
up
spin
with
around the die.
Yeah, kind of let it sit a little bit, let it marinate, and then let's talk about it again in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, whenever, and see if we have something new that maybe you've thought about that I haven't thought about, because I have a blind spot and you kind of see things that I don't see from a different vantage point. So I like that.
And I'll tell you what really helps me sometimes is I'll write down that idea. Write it down on one page, top. This is my idea, da-da-da-da-da. Put it aside. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Come back to it in 2-3 months and stuff and say, you know what? Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something not here.
Yeah.
But just so keep your ideas in there and add detail to it if you can. That one page should have a little bit of detail in there, just enough so you can say, oh, that's as advanced as my thinking was going at that point. But I've learned this, and this since then.
That's good. I think that's why there's a lot of validity to that, because it's the same reason when you read a book twice, you get different things from it.
Absolutely.
Because you're in a different space. You've experienced different things. You've learned different things. And you're like, I've done that many times. And it's like, wow, did they change this book? I can't even believe I didn't read this. I didn't pick this up the first time, or the third time, or the fourth time. And so, very interesting.
Along that line, Stephen King wrote a book. And everyone's familiar with Stephen King, the fiction he's wrote. He wrote a nonfiction book called On Writing. And part of his book, he talks about the writing process for him. Uh-huh. And this is why, less than 1% of people who start writing a book ever finish it. Is because you don't write a book once. You write it about 10 times. He does his first draft and he puts it aside and doesn't think about it for 3-4 months. Then he comes back and he reads it. And he's like, either some parts you're delighted, 90% of the time you hate most of it. And then you start the rewriting process.
Wow.
Writing is about persistence. And he's a master at that. He's put, 100 books out over time. But he goes back and realizes, I have to rewrite this book this many times. And you can't skip steps. You can say, I'm going to write in 2 steps. No, it doesn't work that way. The way it works is every time you're doing it, you're getting a little bit more. The details are coming in. The adjectives and the adverbs are popping out. The conversations, but the dialogue is getting more crisper. You have to go through that exercise. There's no shortcuts. But that's why it's so hard, is because you don't write 1 book, you write 10 books.
How many times did you write your first book?
Oh, at least 10. I'll be honest with you, I pick it up today, and sometimes I'll pick up and I'll read a chapter, and I'm like, okay, I really like that. And other times, like, oh, I wish I could rewrite that whole thing.
How far are you into the second book? You're The Happy Entrepreneur?
I have a first draft at this point.
That's awesome.
Yeah, first draft, and it covers everything from thinking about the things we talked about, knowing your customer, and creating an operational plan. How are you going to finance it? Are you going to take partners or not have partners? All those different elements are covered there. But I also think and the reason why I call it the Happy Entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, you have to take care of yourself. And that's job one. Like we were just talking about, you have to bring the energy. How do you do that on a daily basis? And how do you prepare when things go a little bit south?
Yeah.
What's your backup plan? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I want to include that piece in there as well, because I think that's as important as any part of that is taking care of yourself as the entrepreneur.
I think it is, but it's hard. I think it really is hard, right? I don't think I think most entrepreneurs are very driven. They're hard on themselves. They take no breaks, no days off as they, what I'm saying? It's just really, it's needed. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's not what it's commonly done.
But think about what you just said. If you're not taking any breaks, you're not paying yourself, you're investing yourself 100%, your energy's going like this.
Yeah.
Right? That's tough for your business to be successful, unless there's always, that anomaly where you can hit out of the park there. Yeah. But are you taking time away from the business? Are you paying yourself a salary? Are you getting people to take the load off you? If you're doing those types of things and so many other different things, taking your vacations and that, you need those.
Yeah.
Because when you come back, it's like you said, your ideas start popping the topic.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's just...
It is hard.
It is hard, especially, baby business. I mean, I know for us, our first 4 or 5 years, we barely paid ourselves. $500 a month our first 4 years. 5 years in, we bumped it to 1,000 and we thought we were making it. You know what I mean? It just... but it's just the big, you know what I mean? It's just,
But everyone thinks entrepreneurs are killing it.
Yeah. Listen, at some point, hopefully you can scale, and thank God we've been blessed 16 years now, the last 6, 7, 8 years, things have been fantastic, but gosh, the beginning was so difficult.
Yes, yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about a little bit about the brewery industry, right? What are you seeing? Well, obviously you're a thinker, you're very analytical. I could pick that up. What are you seeing in your space, in other breweries? We've talked about some breweries have closed. What are you seeing, right, wrong, the space in general? What your feelers are out there. I know you're seeing, what are you seeing in your space right now?
Well, 2024 was a tough year for breweries.
Yeah.
The fourth quarter of 2024 was the first time there's been more closings of breweries than openings of the breweries in the history of brewing. So that's a bad thing, right? In general, there's a number of things that are kind of moving against us. One, inflation drove up all the prices in that. And because we're a luxury good at the end of the day, for the most part. People can forego beer and have something else, which when you have a rough economy, that's true. Craft beer was down significantly last year. And they'll publish the numbers and they'll say that we're down 7-9%, some of those things. To me, it's much more than that because something like Sierra Nevada that kind of has a built-in base in that, they're not going to move as much as the small guys like us. And breweries went from, when we started, there was like 8,000. Now there's over 10,000 breweries in the United States. So the numbers have just continued to grow. So they're all over the place. They have a product that's a luxury good in a down economy. And how are you going to stand out and be different in that? So a lot of them can't. And a lot of the people that started breweries were in the build they come phase. You open up the brewery, you're a destination, people will seek you out. You're packed on Saturdays no matter what you do. It's not the case now. People aren't going out. Last year, the statistic was people were going on average 4.1 times a week. In 2023, 4.1. It's down to 1.7 times a week in 2024. That's scary. And when they're going out, breweries typically most of them don't have food. So when people go out, they want to go someplace where they can take the family, have food, and not just beer. So it's hit our industry extremely hard. I think there's some promising things. I think more breweries will continue to go out of business and open up over the next year or two. And that's just kind of riding the ship to some extent. There was too many. There's still probably too many. But breweries also have to be innovative. If they want to survive, what makes it different? Because in the past, we were all collegial. We all got along. This new breed that's coming in hasn't adapted to that. So we was trade ingredients, recipes, information with all matters of breweries. A lot of those breweries aren't around. And the newer guys are not as into that sharing. They got into it because it became an ego boost to be in the brewing industry rather than they had a passion for the beer. So I think what that's transitioned towards is it's more of a dog-eat-dog environment. It's a tough competitive environment right now. But what are we doing that we're consistently getting people to come here or choose to come here? And it goes back to those 3 principles I shared with you earlier.
Okay. I may be wrong on this and challenge me on it, please. Push back. And so do you think maybe the new people entering the space have more of a mentality of there's only one pie and I want to get as much of this pie as possible versus maybe the previous thought process was, no, this is a bakery. There's plenty of business for all of us. We don't need to really compete. We could all do well. Is there any of that or no? Am I off base?
No, it's a good question. I'm not sure I have a really good answer. I think one of the really prevailing is the barriers to entry in this industry were pretty significant. You couldn't go out and just buy all those tanks and buy a brewer because there weren't brewers you could just buy. You had to have that passion to be your own brewer, and you had to have a welder on staff to take milk jugs or something and to make, the tanks. Well, the industry grew enough that if you had enough money, you could buy the tanks. Now there was tank providers. You could find a brewer someplace because there was 8,000 breweries out there. So to encourage what I'll call a lot of the stupid money to come into the business. Didn't really have a passion for brewing, just thought it'd be cool to own a brewery and hang out there on the weekends. And I think that's what we're seeing now is some of those, money doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter if they make money or not because they have a nice pot over there. Whereas the brewers who were initially into it, they had a passion for the beer. They perhaps weren't the businessmen that these new folks are, though. So that's a challenge. They haven't innovated and changed. So that's where I think the forces of this industry are going today. But the barrier entries are down, but I think the risk is shooting to the roof now. It's funny. It used to be, we had those little, threads on Facebook and other sources that says, that brewers can go to and get information. And now when people go out there and say, hey, I'm interested in the brewing industry, the feedback is overwhelmingly negative. Don't do it. You don't have enough money. And because people who have passion for it still want to get into it. They'll say, hey, I can only afford this. Don't go into business. You cannot be successful with that model. And I think that's true. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
What is the, just ballpark, what is the lowest amount of money you think it would cost to start a brewery? And what do you think if someone has expendable income, what's the threshold do you think it would, do you have any numbers off of your head that you think, is 100,000, $1 million? Is it?
It's well over $1 million now. It's well over $1 million to open a brewery. I would think that these days to get a location, to be competitively viable, you probably need between $3 and $5 million.
Dang.
Yes.
That's not a small number.
Nope, not anymore. And I'll tell you, it wasn't that way. What's grown up is the competition. All the things you have to do. You have to put more marketing. It used to be you could market yourself, just being in existence and showing up on Google Maps and stuff. No, you got to market yourself now. You also can't cut corners. You have to, have a place that people want to go and enjoy being there because there's so many other options they can choose from. If you want to share the customer's wallet, you have to go after it aggressively. And then the equipment keeps getting expensive. The grain's more expensive. Of that number I said, you probably have a $500,000 there in inventory and stuff that you have to carry.
It's a big number.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't know that you can be just a brewery anymore. Let me throw that in there too. I think you have to be a restaurant and a brewery anymore.
So you think now, going forward, if you are an investor, founder, like you do have to think about a kitchen, a small kitchen, something to tie food in with the beer.
Absolutely. And you have to have something that makes you unique. Some of that money is, how are you going to be unique from your competition?
I don't disagree. I can definitely see. Listen, I can, from the outside from the outside seeing in, I can definitely see. Listen, competition has increased a lot in the restaurant business. I see my family from my dad buying his first restaurant that he worked at in '84, having up to 7 locations, currently 3 that we operate. The landscape has changed a lot.
Absolutely.
Competition, franchises, people that have a major backing coming in,
Just the cost of things. At our other location, by the time that we had to bid out and were ready to start construction to the time we took over the location, could build, our costs went up 30%. And it was HVAC, electrical, and plumbing.
Yeah.
Boom.
Us too. We just built on to our warehouse last year. We added 30,000 square feet to it. We had got it bid in 2020, maybe 2019, 2020. I think it was 2.1 million. Last year, 3.5 million.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of money. Now, granted, we're established and we were ready for it, and we could take it on, and we run the business very conservatively. It's a healthy company and all that. We don't take any big salaries or anything like that. But gosh, that's a big increase. If you're not.
And how do you justify that? There's an adage. When I was starting off, I wanted to visit a brewery up in up north of here, and the guy had been in the business for about 10 years, and he jokingly looked at me and he says, hey, if you want to make $1 million, you've got to invest too. And he's right. If you want to get that cash flow, you have to put the money in to drive that cash flow.
Interesting. Okay. let's wrap up. Let's talk about a little bit about the future of the business. Lost Worlds, what are you seeing? What are you excited about? What are the 5 things that you're kind of thinking that you guys want to do? I mean, obviously it's a new year.
Give away all of them.
Okay, you know what? Let's not give all the trade secrets, but what are you most excited about in the next couple of years for you specifically? Is it continuing to scale? Is it certain canned beers? Is there brand? I mean, is there the events thing? It sounds like it's the events thing that's really taken off for you guys. Anything specific you want to maybe give a shout out or kind of, talk about for all, all the listeners out there?
So for me, I have to have an open mind. And I get approached by a lot of people, and I'm sure you do too, about different ideas and how we're going to do that. And listen to those. And some of those are nuggets. So I think for us in the breweries, what Lost Worlds is choosing to do is we're evolving from being a brewery to becoming an entertainment company. And what does that mean? So we're floating around with a whole host of ideas at this point in time, and a lot of them depend upon partnerships. Can we find a partner that we can do some stuff that we wouldn't do otherwise? And those partnerships can be unlikely. You just talked about your warehouse space. You say those numbers. I'm just like, that'd be an interesting place to put a barrel aging program in a warehouse like that. You have all the continuous movement. We put some barrels in the back there. It'd be a nice little thing for your people to look at.
Yeah.
What can we do with something like that? So it's those types of things you take everything and make an idea out of it. But we are constantly pushing to have new programs here, and what can we do that's different? So we're going to kick off our Mardi Gras market on March 1st. It's our first market of the year, and we're going to make it different. We thought about, what would be unique for people in the beginning of March? Like we had Mardi Gras. It used to be called the Keukenhof after the Tulip Festival in the Netherlands. But let's make it home. Let's make it about New Orleans type vibe. So what can we do? Roving musicians, we're going to have street corner, performers playing trombones, that type of stuff. And we're, going to have the beats and the Mardi Gras colors and that type of stuff, king cakes and the work.
Yeah.
That to us is fun, creating those new concepts.
That is cool, actually.
I actually enjoy going out and creating. I'm a builder. I like to build and create things. That's why terrible corporate employee, just be perfectly honest with you. I was bumping my head against all kinds of guardrails and it didn't work. But I enjoy that, sitting around with our team and saying, what can we do to make this event special? Yeah. And we have some other things I think are fun, everything from that to, talking to people like to go on vacation right now. Why can't we be a travel company as well? I have relationships with people all over the world, archaeologists and that. Why can't we curate adventures where I can take you to another country and you can be led around by an archaeologist, and it's driven by Lost Worlds Brewing. We're going to tell about your adventures, we're going to do blogs about it, helping people to see what you can do when you explore the world, giving them some motivation. I have a friend right now, she and her husband sold all their possessions, bought a catamaran, and they're going to be selling around the world.
What?
So what do I want to do? I want her blog to be featured at Lost Worlds. I have a buddy who, again, another guy who didn't fit in the corporate world very well, took 3 years off and has ridden his bike around the world. And just cool stories like that. So again, we're storytellers, we're entertainers and stuff, but this may resonate with some people, And his was a struggle, to be perfectly honest, with mental health and just struggling with how he dealt with the world. This is the way he found peace. And can that be meaningful to some people to do those types of things? Or we can highlight, an Appalachian, someone who ran up the Appalachian Trail on that. What was their experiences? How did it transform them? These are stories and stuff that I think, can be part of the Lost Worlds. It fits with our brand, fits with our culture.
Yeah.
And people want interesting stuff like that. It's crazy out there. I don't want to be out there that much.
Yeah.
But if we can help people kind of find a way to step back from the world and enjoy it, that's what we want to do as a brewery.
I love that. I love the idea of an entertainment company. I think it's brilliant. I think it's spot on. I think it definitely will attract the consumer, right? Because you are differentiating yourself from every other. I love that.
But if we fail, we'll fail better, right? We'll learn from this and go and move on. So
that's what John Maxwell's book was, Fail Forward.
Absolutely.
So,
we're all about
okay, last thoughts? Any recommendations, thoughts to the audience about just having a successful 2025? Anything you want to share about just from your experiences?
They should all come see us and buy Lost Worlds beer. If it's not in a place near you, go ask for it. To me, this is what life is about. It's about being engaged in what you do and having fun. And if you're not doing that, find something that makes you passionate and do that. Because there's nothing worse than going through life on autopilot and not waking up and embracing every single day. If you're doing those types of things, everything will become easier. It's some people call it mindfulness, whatever. Living in this moment, figuring what you can do today, because this present moment is the only moment you have. The past way doesn't matter. The future will take care of itself. This moment's where you need to be.
I love that. Dave, I thoroughly. I mean this with all sincerity. What a way to kick off our 4th season. I'm telling you, I love this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And if you guys have not tried, if you guys are in Winston-Salem, okay, if you're in the Cornelius, Lake Norman area outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, if you're in Charlotte, Uptown, the suburbs, Matthews, Ballantyne, Gastonia, obviously they have a location just opened up last year.
Midtown, yep.
Yep. You guys need to stop by, check out, support these guys. They're doing incredible things. Follow them online, at all their platforms. And so, anyway, fantastic. I love this. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 1 of the 4th season of the Paper Trails podcast. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it, buddy.